week in racing. It's time to recap it. And who better to do it than Michael and Magic? Two bros/pros who cover the highs and lows of racing around the globe on every one of the shows. Real fans look forward to these guys and their last thoughts, cause they know they're not talking out of their royal ascot. What they say makes sense. So ladies and gents, sit back and relax as Blinkers Off presents The Magic Mike Show, where you hear the experts speak. The Magic Mike Show. Tune into the show every week. The Magic Mike Show. You can trust the show is the bomb because it's being brought to you by RacingDudes.com.
What's up, everybody? I'm Magic.
And I'm Mike.
And this is The Magic Mike Show, episode 274, Mr. Samich. Boy, I forget who tweeted it first, but the Naira folks put on their big boy pants today, feeling a little strong with themselves. I'm feeling good about it. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Yeah, Naira, not messing around. They officially put everybody on notice here, which I think is awesome. I mean, it's good to see someone else stepping up and calling it out. It would have been really interesting if Medina Spirit won the Preakness, if they would have still done this. But hey, I am happy they did it anyway. It's good to see someone stepping up.
Yeah, so, as Rob Benefield says, yeah, man, not much to talk about here today. Listen, I thought this was going to be a pretty short and easy show. We got you and Aaron and Jared did a great reaction to the Preakness Stakes on Preakness Day on the YouTube channel. I was like, well, we don't really have a whole lot to talk about. We can do our little Magic Mike spin to see who do we project doing improving moving forward, or who do we want to fade at a short price. And then if you'd missed the news, first, Naira comes out and finally, after about a year-long battle to try and figure out what they're going to do to Linda Rice, a $50,000 fine and a minimum 3-year trainer suspension, no license for Linda Rice. So that's a big deal because she's one of the biggest barns in New York and always brings a ton of horses to Saratoga and is very competitive in terms of the overall trainer standings there. And then a little while later, they say, well, now Bob Baffert's not allowed to come to Belmont Park for Belmont Stakes weekend. So they've said until the split sample stuff is confirmed one way or the other from Medina Spirit and the Kentucky Derby, Bobo not welcome. And it's not just him. Jimmy Barnes, his assistant, can't run under his name either. So if you see any Baffert horses there, like Charlatan, who I think is going to move to a new trainer, it's because they're switching barns. Boy, such tough luck for that guy.
Yeah, it's brutal. You hate to see it, don't you? We should clarify, Linda Rice is not for drug violations. Linda Rice apparently bribed officials with large cash Christmas gifts to be able to know who was entered in races before they were announced to the general public and get an edge in placement of horses. So not anything drug related, just another shady side of the business here that came out. But yeah, I think it's really interesting. You saw Spendthrift take some horses away from Baffert. I think you're going to see more and more horses leave that barn. If more jurisdictions cut down where he can run, you're going to force horses out of his barn and go to other barns because they're big purses on the East Coast. And if the East Coast comes crashing down at him, he just has to hide in California. And at some point, that's just not that great long-term strategy. So it's nice to see the industry start taking steps forward. Obviously, we got to wait for the split sample to come back and see what happens there. But they mentioned that he's suspended until that, and then there's going to be a decision, which means that if it comes back positive, you'd think that Naira is going to bring the hammer down. We might not see Baffert at Saratoga. It's going to be interesting to see what they actually decide to do if that split sample comes back positive.
I mean, just think about that. Think about the Met Mile, first of all. That's a race that Baffert targets with whoever his best older male is. We saw him do it with McKinsey a couple of times. Charlatan seemed dead set that the Met Mile was going to be the goal for him. So if you're the owners, which is it's Windstar, SF, China Horse Club, that whole the Avengers, Saul Cumin, right? Boy, they're going to have to figure out what they want to do. And I don't even know, who would you send him to? I mean, I know those guys use a few different trainers, but I mean, Chad Brown's not known for winning the Met Mile. Todd Pletcher maybe just doesn't want it. I mean, remember what happened with Navarro and Service when the horses they got arrested and the horses had to be dispersed. We were like, it's going to be interesting to see who takes these horses because I don't know if you really want those horses after. Slightly different situation here. I think the Baffert one's at least a bit more fit and sound than what Navarro and Service did. But regardless, this is a very interesting turn of events for the two of them. Let me ask you. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think this is a genius move by Naira, though, because the most likely trainers to get him are Pletcher and Brown based on the ownership groups, right? Based on, the Windstar and Saul Cumin and where he has horses. You would think that Pletcher and Brown in Naira are big time shots at it, especially if you want to run the horses on the East Coast. You may see a couple go to the Brad Cox barn as well. But I would think that those are the three trainers that are picking up their cell phones this morning and making some calls and say, hey, you're really limited in where you can run these horses. Are you sure you don't want to bring it over to our barn? And I think that's a huge plus for Naira. I mean, they can pull these horses in for the full season versus having them ship in and out for California and kind of keep it in house. So I think that's part of the reason they may have made this move too. Is just a little gamesmanship too.
How about Brad Cox? I didn't think about it until just now. What about Brad Cox? He gets a lot of those guys' horses sometimes. So he doesn't have a huge presence in New York. But if they were to say, "Hey, Brad, you want to go be king of New York, king of Saratoga this summer? We'll give you a Charlatan, we'll give you a Medina, we'll give you all the good triple tap if he's not dead somewhere, because he was supposed to run at Churchill on Derby weekend and then suddenly disappeared." That'd be interesting. And then Brad Cox, we've seen what he's done with the big horses on the big stages too. So we'll see what happens. This feels good. This is one of those times when it's like we're talking about news in the industry, and it's just like, oh, this is fun news for us to talk about. So I'm excited about the way things are going to get going here.
Yeah, like I said, it's nice to see a jurisdiction come down and do something like this. One of the things we've often talked about is how you need that overall governing body to be able to hand this out. Well, if every jurisdiction just closes the door, you don't need that governing body. But this is a nice first step. We need to make sure that everything continues to roll in this manner, and obviously it has to come back. The split sample has to come back positive and be upheld. I mean, in Arkansas, we even had the split sample come back positive, and then it wasn't upheld a year later. So we're far from the end of this storyline, but it's nice to see that at least there's some doors closing as we kind of get more information.
Darren Randall with a bunch of numbers says, feels like a nice college coaching football change. Yeah. Nice little refresher. It's kind of like, who was it? Baylor? Was it Baylor's football or basketball team where the coach and everybody got fired?
Yes.
Football. Yes, that's right. It was both.
Baylor not great on that track record there. But yeah, their football team got a lot of trouble. It was Art Briles down there.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So we started off with that in the lead, and thanks to everybody for the comments. If you're watching live or you're watching the replay, we're always live Mondays and Thursdays at 2:30 Pacific, 5:30 Eastern. Go ahead and give us a like, thumbs up, a heart. We'd really appreciate it. I guess that's not the best thing that we saw, or aside from that, Mike, what is the best thing that you've seen in the past weekend?
Well, I'm going to go with the start of the NHL playoffs. I am so excited. Well, I'm okay. I am cautiously optimistic to see my Blues play tonight. We're massive underdogs, the Avalanche. But we had 4 games over the weekend, 3 overtime games, 1 5-4 game. You had a 1-0 game. You had a 2-1 game. It was one of those like perfect examples of why hockey is so freaking awesome and why the NHL playoffs are the best playoffs of any sport. But to get 3 overtime games off right out of the gate was pretty awesome. We did a little Bucci challenge for the first one, gave out a free Magic Mike t-shirt to whoever picked the winning goal scorer in that one. So make sure you follow us on Twitter for stuff like that. But yeah, pretty excited to have some NHL playoffs back in my life.
I'm excited for you. I texted you and Aaron, since the Detroit Red Wings are obviously not playoff material yet. I don't have anybody to root for, so my friends are big St. Louis Blues fans. I was like, hey, it was fun a couple years ago with Play Gloria, or was it Play Gloria? It was Play Gloria, right?
Yeah, Gloria.
Okay, yeah.
Gloria.
Yeah.
Gloria.
So that was fun. I got hooked on it because again, I got nobody to root for, so I'll root for my teams, my friends' teams to win. So I was texting you guys about it, and I was like, yeah, like how many, did you let the Avalanche win 1 or 2 before you knock them out and everything? So I'm with you. I hope the Blues go. If the Blues don't, I'm always a big fan of seeing a Canadian team win the Stanley Cup. So that's where my heart's going to lie. But I'm just excited to watch it. The Wild Vegas game, I can't believe that was 1-0 and it went into overtime like that. That felt like it was just a firecracker waiting to explode.
Vegas has a problem with scoring goals in the playoffs. It happened to them last year. It looks like it's going to happen to them again this year. It's their biggest hurdle. They're deep. They're good. But, man, they need some help there. And on the flip side, Tampa, Florida, just pouring them in the net. I mean, there are 9 goals. You had a breakaway with less than 90 seconds to decide the game. Just an awesome game from that perspective. I'm looking forward to Carolina kicking it off tonight. I think they're going to absolutely house Nashville. So if you want to play Carolina -1.5 plus 155, I'm with you. So I think that there's a couple spots you kind of have fun with it. And betting playoff hockey is a lot of fun, too. So happy to have it back and can't wait for it to get rolling here.
Best thing that I saw, so my boy Ruben Fuentes, it broke my heart, but I understood why. He left California. Just hard to get mounts. Honestly, CHRB's got they got a hard on to try and get Ruben suspended for a bunch of stupid shit. We won't get into that. But Ruben decided. Shh. He's a goddamn saint. Dorothy Mantooth's name. He decided he's going to move to Minnesota for Canterbury Park for the summer, and hopefully leave the door open to come back in the fall back to California. I would personally love that, but I texted him and say, hey, congrats. I hope you go out, you have a great time. He is a grade 1 winning jockey, so for him to go to Canterbury, he's going to theoretically get some good mounts. And then the first few days of entries for Canterbury Park meet came out. He's averaging 9 mounts a day for the first 3 days. And I was like, holy shit, like this, there's literally one race each day that he takes off, and every other race he's got a mount. So he's off to a good start. I don't know the Canterbury, I didn't look at the PPs, so I don't know if they're all a bunch of 30-1 mules, but hopefully not. But whatever happens, Ruben in the finale at Canterbury Park, if it's anything like California, he's gonna be a smoke show in the finale races at Canterbury. And hopefully maybe this summer, Michael, we can work it in, do a midweek Canterbury sequence on the Magic Mike Show, because 10% takeout on all of their on their big pick 4, pick 5. So hopefully we can get them a little love this year.
Yeah, Canterbury is going to be my new Sam Houston, and I'm going to make a parallel right out of the gate. You remember when Raylu went from New York to Sam Houston and absolutely crushed it? I think that's a pretty good parallel here. Raylu Gutierrez went from New York down to Sam Houston and was absolutely on fire, especially early in the meet. Got a bunch of good mounts, was picking up Asmussen mounts, things like that. I expect Ruben to have a similar parallel where he goes from that California circuit over to Canterbury, able to pick up some good mounts and bring them home. Hell yes, we're going to do some Canterbury. I mean, Canterbury is my new Sam Houston. So when I'm up at night doing the Samba bombs and tweeting out picks, Canterbury Park will be the one I'm tweeting out. Not only is it from my wife's home state of Minnesota, not only do they have Paul Allen, who's a lot of fun on the mic. They've got and I can't remember his name, so I apologize if you're listening. Their ring announcer was someone who beat me out of an NHC or BCBC earlier, and then sent me a DM about it. So we've been going back and forth. But they also have 10% takeout on that pick 5, which is absolutely huge. And their pick 6 is a $1 pick 6, no jackpot, which is awesome. So it's so that $1, and it doesn't. So like Naira, has a $1 pick 6, 14% takeout, but on a carryover days it goes up to 25. Carryover days, it's the exact same at Canterbury. So they're trying to take care of the player. Generally in the track is a little bit of speed favoring. So make sure if you're playing the track, look for more forwardly placed horses. The turf course is where you can get some real prices home, either turf or lone speed on the dirt. So those are kind of where I'm looking for prices. And that's one of the tracks I really enjoy playing. I want to go out there. I'd love to check it out. If we got out there, I bet we would be treated like kings if we could do a live show, but I don't see that happening this summer.
Maybe not this summer. Things are going a little too slowly for that. But next summer, Canterbury, we're coming for you. But Ruben's going to come back to defend his title. We'll be out there. We'll do a live show from the track. Alex Berg, which I was trying to remember. I was like, I know there's somebody who's a Canterbury fan, and I think it's Alex. So I'm glad to see Alex is going to Canterbury tomorrow night. 90+ entries with a 10% takeout. Good Lord. The intrinsic value by having an average of 9 horses per race for a pick 5, pick 6, along with that 10%, now you're getting, your takeout goes even lower based on the intrinsic value of having so many horses to spread the money with, right? Yes,
100%. And you also don't have $500 tickets being bet into these pools. So one long shot makes a huge difference because the all button is just not hit that much. So the upper end of tickets into like Canterbury and Sam Houston type pick 5 pools is going to be in the $200 to $300 range. You don't realize how big of a difference that makes if you don't have those $500 tickets that have all in 3 legs. It separates everybody incredibly. It's a lot more. And you also have tickets where you're going to have 1 single or 2 singles, and they have to get those home. They're often favorites. If you can beat 5 favorites in a pick 5 sequence, you're looking at $10,000. And if you look at the pick 5s that returned last year at Canterbury, they were huge. They're going to be nothing but big this time again. I'm excited about this meet getting going tomorrow night.
Vicky wants to know if aren't you always treated like kings?
I don't know if we've ever been treated like kings.
Yeah. Is that Lily? Was that Lily coming in?
No, my in-laws are here. They're actually just leaving right now. So my father-in-law came in and waved to me. So goodbye, father-in-law, mother-in-law. It's good to see you. It's been a while.
I was going to say, you've got your in-laws leaving. Mine are here for a few more days. It's been great. They're helping watch Baby Boy Magic while we do the Magic Mike Show. And on today's show, we're going to be looking at the Preakness Stakes, the Black Eyed Susan Stakes, and then also the Dinner Party Stakes, which is the race before the Preakness. Mike's got a couple horses he really wants everybody to kind of stable up and either look to play moving forward or maybe fade at a short price. Boy, it's I was afraid I'd be a little too tired for this, but the Baffert Linda Rice thing has got me energized, Mike. Let's get into it. Riders up. All right, Mike, let's start here with the Preakness Stakes from this past Saturday, May 15th. $1 million race, second leg of the Triple Crown. We all know about this horse. Not the result that I thought halfway through the turn. I really thought for sure that you and I were going to win one of these Triple Crown races with a claim, just like we did a couple of years ago with Sir Winston in the Belmont. Almost got it done. Good Lord, Rombauer. Rombauer was like a little tiny bullet on the track, just zipping right by everybody. And I wrote about it in the recap for the website. It's always great when good people like Flavien Prat and Michael McCarthy win a race, a big race like this, especially after the fresh hell that we've been in this sport for the last couple of weeks. So not the result that we wanted, because we wanted Midnight Bourbon to win, but if he couldn't do it, I'm glad it was Rombauer. What did you think about this race?
Financially, this was an absolute train wreck for me. From an emotional standpoint, I was happy, right? I was all over Concert Tour here, and that was bad from like the second step of the race. You kind of knew it was over on the first turn. Rombauer, though, man, this was a huge step forward for him. I mean, we had someone talk about how, Medina Spirit pretty much ran the same race and finishes third, and Rombauer improves exponentially, and everyone's happy. Even they're like, but this was the plan all along for Rombauer. And we did a pre-show, and we talked about this, and I feel so stupid. I had the triple in my top 4, but I was so into Concert Tour, I didn't actually hit the triple, which was really frustrating. This horse was placed for this race, specifically targeting this race from the start of the year. Won the El Camino Real Derby out in Golden Gate, went over and ran in Lexington, and then took a step forward here and ran into the Preakness. This was third off the layoff. That's a move that Michael McCarthy came from that Pletcher lineage, right? That's the move that Pletcher makes to set these horses up for the big time third off the layoff race. And Rombauer absolutely delivered here. And Flavien Prat just did what Flavien Prat does. He put this horse in the perfect position where if he was good enough, he can win. And the second and third place finishers here were completely logical to finish second and third. Midnight Bourbon and Medina Spirit are both very good average horses, right? Like they're not that great. And we talked about Medina Spirit got that A+ trip, and everyone else good got a C or D trip. That's why he won the Derby. Well, Midnight Bourbon got a B- trip and was able, or a B+ trip here, and was able to beat Medina Spirit's A+ trip pretty easily. And Rombauer was just able to go right by both of them. And that's really how this ended up. And you look back, and you should have just played a cold try and gone like 10-6 over 5 over 3, because it's so logical that Midnight Bourbon and Medina Spirit end up running second and third here when you look back at it.
Yeah, I thought that Midnight Bourbon, so obviously a much lesser depth than what he faced in the Kentucky Derby, didn't get knocked around out of the gate, got in the perfect position, and I thought that he did exactly what we expected from him, and he just ran into a buzzsaw in Rombauer. By the way, Rombauer's first win on dirt was the Preakness Stakes. He won his debut on turf at Del Mar, and then he won the El Camino Real on the Golden Gate Synthetic. And I saw our good friend Jay Privman say something about it was the first time, to his recollection, since the 1800s, that the Preakness winner's victory was the first time that he'd won on dirt. So that's pretty crazy. I'm kind of leaning with you, Mike, that he beat a bunch of good average horses here. I don't think that we're seeing too many world beaters coming out of this. Listen, a lot of these horses, aside from Concert Tour, this is kind of what we expected from them. I didn't really see any of these horses doing anything in this race. Keep Me in Mind does what he always does, which is he makes you get excited when you look at the chart. Like, hey, he keeps running fourth. Yeah, but you're what, 7, 9? Was that 9.5 lengths behind the winner? Yeah, he's never in these races. So you want to play him in the bottom of your tries and supers? That's the best spot to go. I guess unless there's any other horses you want to talk about here, Mike, it's pretty easy. Let's look. Yeah, is there?
There is. I think we should talk at least a little bit about. I want to pull up the name so I make sure I get it right. France Godaina.
Yes.
France. We talk about the Rosario Bell Curve, right, and how you have these great rides and these terrible rides. I'm officially renaming Rosario Bell Curve now because I love it. I'm
totally with you there.
So it wasn't Bell Curve's fault here, but this was just a rough trip. The 7 was kind of pulling around the first turn, then jumped inside on the back stretch. Never really got comfortable. Never got like relaxed and settled. I think France Godaina is much better. I think I watched the replays from back in Japan, and the horse ran well. Horse was absolutely taken out at the gate in Dubai. I thought this was a trip where the horse was a little bit rank and just kind of tugging a lot the whole time. I think that if this horse can settle, and they already said we're going to the Belmont, and the Belmont has been the plan the whole time for this horse, I think this horse can settle. It's actually a dangerous price in the Belmont. I'm not saying the horse is going to win, but it's a horse that I'll definitely be using in the exotics in the Belmont.
I'm with you, actually. I'm glad you brought him up. I'd forgotten about him, but I'd heard a lot of talk and chatter about this horse that, unfortunately, because he came from Japan, and they brought him over as early as they could to target both the Preakness and the Belmont, because there's $1 million bonus if he wins one of them.
The Belmont.
I think.
The
Is
Belmont.
it just okay?
Yeah.
Dr. Ting says he didn't get sushi the night before. That's why he didn't run well.
He was in the quarantine barn, man. What was he going to do?
That's the thing. This horse was in quarantine the entire time, and they were he threw the exercise ride or whatever. He was very quirky in the days leading up to the race. And people thought he was a little bit of a nutcase. If you think about the fact that the horses like to be around other horses, even if they've got their barns separated. They're still by each other. This poor horse is over by himself. There's nobody there. He's all alone. He hates it. The second time that he threw a rider in the morning, he turned around and just wanted to go right back to the barn because he wasn't comfortable. So I really hope that they're allowed at Belmont to just put him amongst the other horses and at least let him get more comfortable, because I'm with you that when he ranged up on the backstretch on the inside and Rosario was choking him, trying to get him to calm down, I was like, shit, this is going to push Medina Spirit even harder, because he left that lane open, and I was like, yeah, go. Just like, I didn't think he was going to win, but like, let's go with him here. Yeah. And he does, if you, like Mike said, if you watch the replays, and here he was rank and not comfortable, but he does like to be closer to the pace. You need that kind of a running style for the Belmont. Mile and a half closers are not, keep me in mind, is going to get fourth because he's about 20 lengths behind. If this horse can settle, I think bottom of the tribe, bottom of the super, that's going to be, you're going to get better than 24-1, which is what you had here in the Preakness.
Yep. And just to bring up Michael Meyer's point here, isn't it part of Rosario's job to get the racehorse to settle? Yeah, a little bit, yeah, but sometimes it's impossible. And this was one of those situations where it looked, I don't think he could have done anything except let the horse run 100% all out, and that's how the horse would have settled, and then he would have just quit at some point. So it's one of those situations where it's like, do you try and strangle the horse back, but you're using the horse's energy by fighting with him, or do you just let him roll? But if you let him roll, you're going to completely burn the horse out before the end of the race. And so it's almost an impossible situation in this spot. Trust me, I love to bang on Rosario as much as anyone. I don't think this one was Rosario's fault. I think this was the horse just not, I don't think he would have settled for anyone. Be interesting to see if you get a new jockey though in the Belmont. And I'm not saying that would be a positive or negative, because again, I think this was the horse just really being out of it after everything that's happened to it over the last few weeks. But I do think it's gonna be interesting if we see a new jockey in the Belmont as well.
I'd like to see somebody like Mike Smith get on him. I want to see what Mike Smith can do, because Mike Smith is or Johnny V. To me, those are about the two best guys who can get horses to relax. If anybody can do it, I'm going to trust in one of those two guys. And part of it is their vast experience, but I think either one of them could be a good fit. Let's talk about the Belmont Stakes, because Francisco Dean is going to head out that way. Rombauer is pointing to the Belmont Stakes. It sounds like Keep Me in Mind is probably going to go there. They think with that long stretch and the long distance, yeah, he's going to pick off a bunch of slow horses again. Good job. Midnight Bourbon they're on the fence. They're leaning Belmont, but without really knowing who else is going to show up there, do you have an inclination where you want to lean with the Belmont with any of these horses?
Oh man, the pace is going to be wild, right? I mean, we're now losing Medina Spirit. Obviously, we're not going to have Medina Spirit in the Belmont. So now you're going to have a horse like Midnight Bourbon that could be your pace setter. Francisco de Ina could be your pace setter, based on everything we've just discussed. Essential Quality could be your pace setter, based on everything discussed. Malathat could be your pace setter. Like, there's a lot of different options here that we could go. I think it's shaping up to be a really interesting race. I hope that we get all of these horses that we're talking about that could be there. I think the big key here is who ends up in the entry box, because it's going to be a lot of fun if we can get some horses here. Maybe Wayburn could go to the lead. I have so little interest in any New York horse. After you watch this race back, I don't know how you can possibly think a New York horse is going to be able to win the Belmont, because it's just they would have to be the ultimate grinder and everyone would have to fall over. Like Risk Taking, who you pull out of the Peter Pan, should have stayed in Peter Pan. Like, let's just say that. We'll just put it that way, right?
Boy, that was a bad decision. That was a really, really bad decision there. I forgot that. I'm glad you brought her up. Malathat, the winner of the Kentucky Oaks. Yeah, after that, they were like, maybe Belmont, and we saw what happened with Pletcher and Rags to Riches, right? That was Pletcher, I believe. Rags to Riches in 2007, which we were talking in our text chain earlier about just how amazing that 2007 crop was. You had Hard Spun, Street Sense, Scat Daddy, Curlin, and then you had Rags to Riches on the Philly side. Like, find a better group of 5 horses that competed in the Triple Crown that influenced the breeding moving forward, because that's just, oh, good Lord. You just get all excited thinking about it.
It's pretty darn good. But if you're going to take a shot, wouldn't this be the group of 3-year-old males you take a shot against?
Absolutely.
If you who are you really afraid? If Essential Quality doesn't show up, and by the way, I still think Essential Quality is the best 3-year-old in this class. So let's put that one over here. Yep. If Essential Quality doesn't show up, wouldn't Malathat be the favorite?
Boy, you'd love to play her if you get a price on her. That's for sure.
Because it's Midnight Bourbon that you're worried about. It's Francisco de Ina on the lead that you might get loose. Like, who are you really that concerned about that's going to be in this field? That's going to Rombauer, I guess. I mean, we got to respect Rombauer off this performance, but you kind of feel like that was the performance of a lifetime, and I want to see him validate it before I'm willing to take a short price. And Rombauer, I guess, is your favorite if Essential Quality doesn't show up, and Rombauer does. Rombauer's your favorite, right? Mm-hmm. There's no one that would get so. I'm not really looking to back Rombauer at 7-5 at a mile and a half. So there's just a lot of lot of head scratchers heading into it. It's going to be all about who's in that entry box and how this pace sets up.
Yeah, I'd say either him or I think Midnight Bourbon, because Midnight Bourbon was, I don't know, I can't remember if he actually was. No, he was Medina Spirit ended up being the favorite, but for a long time, Midnight Bourbon was the favorite for the Preakness. So if people look at the pace setup and they say now there's no Medina, and you got Wayburn, you got a bunch of mules trying to vie for the lead, and you got Midnight Bourbon, he's on paper he's going to look good. That's just going to be exciting, and I know a lot of people are going to be excited about the Pletcher horse that won the Peter Pan. Was it Promise Keeper? Was that his name?
Yeah.
Sorry guys,
Promise
baby
Keeper.
brain. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and then there was another horse that ran really well in that race too.
But where I was going with that is the Peter Pan horses get a lot of hype going to the Belmont because they just won over the track and they look like they're on the improve. And we've seen a lot of the horses in the Belmont not do as well. And I'd have to do some research, but my feeling says the Peter Pan horses don't play in the Belmont.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you could say Promise Keeper is going to be pretty good. I could see an argument there, but for me, I am just staying away from New York until further notice on these 3-year-olds because they got stomped in the Derby, right? 13th and 18th for Bourbonic and Dynamic One, and they ran the 17th and 18th fastest adjusted time, so even worse with adjusted times. I guess highly motivated ran pretty well, so you could make him the argument that he's the outlier in this whole thing, but I just need to see something before I can get behind these horses at anywhere near a short price. That was my big knock against Crowded Trade too. Yeah.
Oof. Boy, Chad Brown, I'm sorry. I'm real sorry. Not really. Vicky, we'll move on after this. What are your thoughts on Midnight Bourbon? Does he want more distance? I know I'm biased. Every time I watch Midnight Bourbon run, he reminds me of Tiz the Magician. I think he's a little bit farther along at this point than Tiz the Magician was. In fact, I'm almost positive. But they're both Tiz nows, and they like to go to the front and just keep going and going and going. They're hard to pass, but they don't like to pass horses. I think that distance, based on his breeding, because he's got Malibu Moon on the dam side, I think just like Tiz the Magician, he should be able to run all day. He's not super fast, but he will run all day. What do you think?
I think he wants to face horses. I think he's just like
well, also that
I think he's a great mid-America Derby horse, right? Yeah. I could see him winning the Pennsylvania Derby, the West Virginia Derby, but there's always going to be someone who's just a little bit better than him, and he's going to try his little tail off and just run second and third a lot. Which is great. Is if you're playing in race exotics, this is a great horse to include, a great horse to throw out in multi-race bets, and he'll never catch you. And people will always pump money toward him in the win pool because he runs these solid second and thirds. It's just there's always someone better than him, isn't there? Are you talking about
Midnight Bourbon or Tiz the Magician? Because they sound like the same argument.
Touche. Tiz the Magician has a little more guts than Midnight Bourbon. I will say that. He didn't fold up the lawn chair, but as soon as Rob Bauer went by, he didn't really try. So he couldn't get past Hot Rod Charlie, and before that was Mandaloon, and it's always somebody, right? And these are all pretty good horses, but it's always somebody. And so I think he just kind of needs that little step down in class, the Mid America Grade 1 or possibly a Grade 2. I think that's where he really fits more.
I think one of the things that excites me the most about Midnight Bourbon is unless he gets hurt, we are seeing this horse at age 5. We're going to get a lot of good mileage out of this horse in these older, next year at 4 and 5, a lot of those older male dirt handicap races. You're going to see him at Oaklawn, you're going to see him at Belmont, wherever Asmussen wants to send him. He's going to go to those races. Winning them, he's going to need a lot of luck, I think, or very small fields. But I think he's going to be really excited to keep following, just like we love the sprinters, the turf and dirt sprinters, because they all get gelded, so you're going to see him until they're 8 or 9. So we talked about. Sorry,
I can't wait to see him on the slop. He's going to run in a Grade 1 at Oakland over the mud, and that will be the time he jumps up and beats everybody. This is a Tiz now by Malibu Moon. That is a very good slop pedigree.
Just like Mystic Guy did earlier this year. So we talked about Ron Bauer winning the Preakness. That was his first win on dirt. A day before, Army Wife in the Black Eyed Susan Stakes, her first win going 2 turns in this race. Congratulations to Mike Maker. I almost made him one of the 3 stars of the weekend because he won 2 stakes Friday at Pimlico, and then he won 2 on Saturday. His barn was ready for this weekend, including with Army Wife, who 9-2 is a nice price on her, and she definitely, if you look at her form, was on the improve. Looked like a logical play for me. I didn't touch this race, but looking at the form, I'm like, this seemed pretty logical to me. What did you think?
Yeah, this is my fourth pick. I was a little frustrated with the ride here from a couple rides in here because I saw the pace playing out differently, and it definitely did not play out the way I wanted to. But I agree with you. I think Army Wife was a pretty logical horse here, and Bell Curve was on the right side of the bell curve for this one. Was able to get a great trip, kind of sneak up through the lane, but then veer outside of the speed horse so that the horse was comfortable down the lane and be able to go right on by and kind of cruise to victory here. And it was a good job of noticing that second quarter pace and be able to move the horse up closer to the lead to be able to get the job done. If you go back and you watch, that last race, the Gazelle we talked about, I just basically took a shit all over the New York males that are 3-year-old. The females have been pretty good. I mean, search results ran a heck of a lot better than I thought she would, facing Malathat in the Kentucky Oaks. And now Army Wife comes back and validates that race. If you go back and watch the race, she was checked between there. She had a little bit of trouble in the race. You could almost say that she had the right to take a step forward here. So I thought, 92 was a pretty good price on Army Wife here to get $450 back. Unfortunately, I didn't go deep enough to get it. I had this horse in fourth, and this is where I was upset with myself. I should have not been on Crazy Beautiful at all. The California 3-year-old fillies have been atrocious. The 3-year-old males have been great, right? They've now won both Triple Crown races. Pac-12 is dominating that side of it. But man, outside of your girl who got hurt, the 3-year-old fillies in California just left something to be desired.
Yeah, that's for sure. So we got a little excited when Beautiful Gift fell way off the board in this race. It was a 2-1 favorite. We got excited because it was like, hey, look, Bafford's first horse after the whole shenanigans and didn't run a lick. I think this was a very bad favorite. It's a very beatable favorite for the exact reason you said. Aside from Moonlight Doro, there hasn't really been anything good 3-year-old filly-wise in California. I know you were excited about Iced Latte, and she didn't get there for you. You talked about a couple trips that you weren't excited or rides that were interesting for you. Do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, Iced Latte was one of them. I thought Iced Latte had to be on the lead, and this horse, essentially 3-4 wide, taking the concert tour trip here, I thought was absolutely foolish. I don't think you're going to be able to get the job done. And the number one thing that upsets me is when you have horses that seem to need the lead, that need to be sent, and they don't make the lead. You just kind of scratch your head because you're like, come on, what are we doing here, right? Or if you have, and we talk about Rosario doing this with some horses, and in this case, it was Saez, who's usually a little bit more aggressive. And in this spot, for some reason, he just wasn't that aggressive. So we'll have to see kind of where Iced Latte goes from here. This was probably a little bit too much too soon for Iced Latte, and that was the big issue. I mean, this is a pretty big step up in class here, and just wasn't really able to get the job done. I also am going to kind of. I mentioned that I don't really like Beautiful Gift. I may give a Beautiful Gift another chance back, depending on where she sits, because I thought her chances here were not great when she sat 4 wide first turn, 3 wide second turn, and you just weren't seeing people be able to close over this Pimlico track all weekend. So this was probably worse on paper than it's going to look a lot worse on paper than necessarily was on the racetrack, but I'm not sure you can get a really good price back on her next time anyway.
I don't know. I feel like in the few years that I've been covering horse racing, the Black Eyed Susan winner doesn't really seem to do much moving forward. I know in the past you had a horse like Stop Charging Maria won this race, but I don't know that any of these really excite me. And you only get an 86 buyer for Army Wife, which is a continued improvement for her. She's nothing against her here in this spot. I just don't know that we saw anyone really stand out in this as far as continuing to move forward in this summer. But we have races like the CCA Oaks or the Alabama, which are going to be longer at Saratoga. Are there any horses here that you think that, a little bit more seasoning, maybe someone like Iced Latte, you said it's maybe a little bit too much too soon. Is that a horse you could see stepping forward as the summer progresses?
Yeah, I mean, this was only her 4th race, and this was not the trip she wanted. So I do think that you could see some improvement as she gets older. So Iced Latte is one of those that I would kind of draw a line through this race in hindsight and let her future decide how good she is versus making this race be the data point that you look at consistently. You make a good point about the Black Eyed Susan too. Look, in the Triple Crown, you have the Derby, you have the Preakness, you have the Belmont. They're all pretty prestigious, and you have horses that want to win all 3 or want to run back or win one of the 3. The Kentucky Oaks really is it. You don't really hear about the Triple Crown on the Philly side. You don't have that they're not pushing horses back in 2 weeks. And so because of that, you have a lot of these quality fillies in the Kentucky Oaks, and often the Black Eyed Susan's a little weaker because it's so close to Kentucky Oaks, and there isn't that same, same buzz around it, right?
Yeah. Which is fine. I mean, not every horse is going to be, a superstar that we get excited about, and it is only grade 2, but yeah, it is what it is. Let's talk about a horse that continues to do extremely well in the stakes races. Maybe not consistently, but you at least know the horse is going to try to go to the lead and try to hold on. Some like it Hot Brown in the Dinner Party Stakes on Saturday. It was one race before the Preakness. This is a horse that usually, if I think he's not going to get a lone lead or be able to at least set the pace, I don't usually want to play him. He didn't get that here, and yet he's still ran his butt off. He gets a 96 buyer, a little short for him, but he's had multiple hundred buyers. What did you think about this race for him?
I thought he showed another dimension. I mean, you mentioned it. This is a horse that generally need to be on the lead to be able to win. Flying Scotsman was clearly in here to kind of be a rabbit for English B, and we'll get into those two in a second. Always love it when one stablemate cuts the other off. But Some Like It Hot Brown was able to sit behind that instead of go out there with Flying Scotsman, and was able to go right around the top of the stretch and have something left here. I thought that the 6 Talker Listen was going to get the job done about midway through the turn, because I didn't see the one being able to go by and then hold. And Some Like It Hot Brown just kind of kept finding over that long Preakness or the long Pimlico stretch. By the way, my number one complaint with Pimlico,
Camera angles?
not even the camera angles.
Oh.
They have the pillars, the poles for the finish line, like right here, right? But the mirror is like 6 feet in front of it. So if you're looking for like who won at the line because people kept like, oh, I can't believe this horse won the photo. It's like, well, the photo isn't taken at the frickin' finish line pole. It's taken like a good 1.5 feet, 2 feet in front of it, where you have that mirror in the opening in the rail. And man, like it's so hard to tell who won a frickin' photo when you're trying to guess where the line is first, right? So can we fix that somehow, Pimlico? Like Gulfstream Park stops the red line at the end, so you know exactly where it is on the rail. Like there's a bunch of ways to do this versus just kind of have a random mirror in the middle of a gap and no one really knows where it is. So anyway, that was my one problem. I can handle the camera angles. It's really frustrating when you had like 5 races that were all really close photos and you're not sure if you won or lost. That kind of sucks. Just anyway. So there's my rant for Pimlico for the day. But look, Some Like It Hot Brown ran a good race here, was able to hold on. This was the last of Mike Maker's wins for the weekend. He had a huge weekend, obviously, with the multiple stakes wins, like you mentioned. Special Reserve obviously looked huge. Wish that had happened to Keeneland, but we won't go into that. This race is interesting. The reason why we wanted to talk about this race, I think you're going to see 4 or 5 of these horses all summer in these different races, and it's important to kind of look back at this race and figure out who's going to take steps forward. This should be the start of a pretty good campaign for Some Like It Hot Brown. And it was interesting to see this new dimension to it. Like you mentioned, this is a 96 buyer. He's had over hundreds before. It was an 88 to start out this season. This is a 5-year-old who seems to be continuing to get better. And this is like a type of horse I can see makers stretching out and going into those 1 3/16, 1.5 races and trying to wire the field with. So I think Some Like It Hot Brown is going to have an interesting 2021 here moving forward. Talker Listen's another one I'm interested in. I played this horse in the podcast. I think this horse is the one that has a shot at continuing to move forward. Really lightly raced horse here in the U.S. And a 99 buyer before this race coming into it. Couldn't quite replicate that, but I think it's going to be one that you're going to hear from quite a bit. What did you think of the top 2 here?
Oh, definitely. So Some Like It Hot Brown is a New York bred. So Maker can go to Saratoga or Belmont after this and decide, does he want to go to a grade 1 or a grade 3, or does he want to go beat up state breds? Because there's nobody in the state bred program in New York, and they've got a good state bred program. There's nobody that can tackle Some Like It Hot Brown, especially if he gets a lone speed angle. So a lot of versatility. If you own a horse like that, God, you just love your chances. And he's won. I mean, he's got 5 stakes he's now won. So incredible. Talker Listen is a horse that I really was excited. And if you and Aaron did the pick 4 sequence, this probably was going to be my top pick in the race, Talker Listen, because you had Arnie Delacour, who I love on the turf, second off of a layoff, second in like 2.5 months there. The horse has potential. And then you get Flavien Prat aboard, which, by the way, Flavien Prat, 2 Mount Saturday at Pimlico. He gets second in this race and he wins the Preakness. Not a bad little trip for him. But you're getting the best jockey that the horse has ever had in Flavien Prat, who knows how to handle versatile horses on turf. I think with a little bit more of a pace setup, because he did put him close, but he was still, about 3-4 lengths behind the pace. If Flying Scotsman and Some Like It Hot Brown had kind of engaged each other, this horse might have been able to win. On the off chance that Some Like It Hot Brown didn't calm down, I think that would have been a great opportunity for him to jump up there. I don't know if we're going to get 14-1 on him again anytime soon. That's the one concern I have, is that this was a good wedding here. I'm scared to see what the funeral might be.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. If Sacred Life keeps going off at sub 6-5, then maybe we will, because this horse is just wildly overbet at this point. We talked about it a little at the podcast, how you just can't trust this horse as a favorite anymore. Sacred Life, this was bad, man. This was not good at all. So, it's going to be interesting to see Brown getting back to Belmont and Saratoga with a horse like this. And if you see that turnaround in form. By the way, his other horse here runs last. Not good either. So we'll get into that too. But this is one of those situations where I think that the price was inflated because you had these Brown horses that were taking money that especially with Sacred Life. This is like the 4th or 5th chance we've given this horse. And this horse is just not getting it done. And there was no excuse here either. The 5 just didn't kind of fire. I mean, Jared and Aaron were wildly upset with this horse. We were on the feed, and they had the exacta with 1/5. And they're like, he ends up dead heating for 4th. This horse could have easily won the race if he kicked a little bit better. So it's one of those situations where I think, depending on who's in the race, you may still get a decent price. But man, like, I'm not touching Sacred Life at all in anything until we see this horse win now. He has to beat me for me to do it.
Yeah, if you look at, I mean, he's had 3 of his last 4 starts going into this were Grade 1 races, and so Zulu Alpha, Digital Age, Raging Bull beating him. 2 of those were his stablemates, but he was not anywhere really close to those horses in that group. I think this is just, God, we talked about it earlier with how bad Chad Brown was doing at Gulfstream, and he hates the Gulfstream turf. He's getting his wins at Monmouth, at Aqueduct, at Tampa. This horse's big win in the United States was $100,000 stakes at Monmouth. Like, when it's Saratoga and Monmouth season, and Chad Brown is sending horses to Monmouth and then sends them somewhere else, well, you see what happened in the Turf Classic. He went from that win and was the favorite, the 9-5 favorite in the Turf Classic, and was never close. So that Chad will tip his hand usually about where are his good horses, where is he sending them. So, and that's something you taught me, by the way. So thank you for that.
Yeah. He wants to win in Saratoga. He wants to win at Belmont. His best string go there. I think he duped us a little bit since he didn't send his best string to Gulfstream this year because he didn't like the way the turf course was playing, which I totally understand. He's got horses that want slower paces and close, and that's not Gulfstream Park. But
nope.
I definitely think he kind of tips his hand when you see those horses go to Monmouth and then not go to Saratoga or Belmont. That means it's the second team. It's not the A string.
I'm with you. All right, that's going to do it for the Magic Mike Show. Thank you so much for joining Mike and I to talk about some of our favorite races from the weekend at Pimlico. Boy, I had the chat closed for a second there. And dates with plates. Boy, you are blowing us up. Let me take a look here. Let's see here.
You can pull it up. We'll pull up the 3 of them. So I think this is interesting because this is something that people are going to start talking about.
I'm just trying to make sure I get the 3 because you did mention 3 topics. So the first one, if the trainers are more afraid of the positive tests at this Belmont, the handicapping angle has to consider that. That's the only way how Rombauer won. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I disagree because they haven't shown positive tests in the Derby or in the So Asmussen hasn't had a single positive test with Midnight Bourbon. Cox hasn't had a single positive test with Derby horses. I'm not saying they are or not doing anything, but I am going to say they are not being tested positive for it. So them changing what they're doing is probably highly unlikely. So whatever you think they're doing or not doing, I think they're going to continue to do whatever you think they're doing or not doing because I don't think you're going to see people more worried about positive tests. I think that you're just going to see people. It's tough to how to properly put it. Look, I think that the hammer coming down on Bob Baffert is definitely going to put some people on the fence of doing something or not doing something, or how close they push it to that line. But I these 2 specific trainers haven't had any issue in the Triple Crown Series yet, and so I'd be surprised if anything changes with their horses. So I wouldn't handicap off that. I would handicap them just like I would normally handicap a Steve Asmussen horse or a Brad Cox horse, and that may differ between each person and how you handicap.
Yeah, but again, not saying anything with Brad Cox. When you took Nick's Go and just turned him into this, world superstar, winning multiple Grade 1s, some people had questions about it because he hadn't really shown that, at least that consistency earlier in his career. If nothing came out of all of those actions, and they went over to the Saudi Cup, and it didn't work out for Nick's Go to win that race, but they do heavy testing over there, and they don't give 2 flying shits about the American politics with racing. So they would have just easily said, no, you're suspended or something. So if nothing came out of those, I'm with you. But it is a good question, and it's kind of almost along the same lines of the Lasix, where it's like Lasix versus no Lasix. Sometimes you just got to try and figure out how much do you want to put into this. I know with Aaron that he said, listen, I hate it, but like if I'm trying to win money and help customers, help the fans win money, sometimes you got to be just like, look, I think – I bet Concert Tour in the Preakness. I put 10 on him because I was like 7-2 on Concert Tour's value here. Whether or not I like his trainer, there's a little bit of value there, and I was trying to sneak something. I'm very happy I lost that $10, but it's kind of that way. Peter Miller, the turf sprint. Look what he did. He claimed Hembry last year, puts him in the Joe Hernandez Stakes on January 1st, wins it. Then test positive for something, and they have to, give up some purse money or something. But look, he's already won, and it wasn't even. I don't think they disqualified him. They just fined Peter Miller like $500. It was barely even anything. So yeah, Peter Miller. I'm gonna do that. I'm just like I hate it, but if I want to make money, if I want to survive a pick 4 and try and get a nice score, you have to do that until the racing boards figure out what they're doing to stop him.
Yep. And then today's news was a positive step in that direction, right? I mean, when you're seeing multiple year suspensions, and obviously, again, not for a drug suspension in Linda Rice's case, but still a multiple year suspension for something that is influencing the odds of races, right? And you see them suspend Bob Baffert until further notice based on their split sample coming back. Those are steps in the positive direction to help the horse player handicap just the horses and just the trainers, not any extracurriculars that you may or may not think are going on.
Well, thank you for the questions. There was also one about Chad Brown. I don't actually think that Chad Brown is doing anything dicey there. I think that Chad Brown is just having a really off year. And he, at the end of last year, after the Breeders' Cup, he wasn't that super excited about his turf horses, especially coming into this year. So we thought maybe he was just sandbagging a little bit. And I think this is a reload year. Pletcher had to go through this a few years ago. Remember when none of his 2-year-olds could run a lick or break at New York? It's like, it's just an off year for Pletcher. Sometimes that shit just happens.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that, look, Brown had a terrible Gulfstream meet, even on the dirt. Like, he was winning more on the dirt than he was on the turf. It was an absolutely brutal meet for him. It'll be interesting. He started to seem to heat up a little bit, and we'll see how well he can do moving forward. But yeah, I mean, I remember Pletcher couldn't get a horse to break at Saratoga for the entire 2019 year. Like, it's every 2-year-old was overbet and just couldn't get it done. Sometimes these barns they're just off years. And like, it's interesting because I talked about, the conference analogies when you have these 3-year-olds. Well, and one question is like, well, is the West Coast always the best? It's like, no, this ebbs and flows. And like, we've seen some of the West Coast turf horses start to win East Coast turf races. Maybe that is now starting to ebb and flow away from just East Coast dominance. And then maybe that's because of Chad Brown's turf horses. Like, there's a lot of different things you kind of have to keep moving forward with your handicapping. You're never going to be able to be stagnant, be successful. You got to try and get ahead of these things. It's one of the reasons I haven't been using Brown as much, and that's been pretty good recently. And I started to use Pletcher more after we've seen him kind of come back from 2 years ago. So you just kind of have to keep following the game and keep ebbing and flowing with the different movements and try and stay ahead of it.
Who was that? Chad Brown had one horse at Keeneland towards the end of the meet that was like out of nowhere. I was like, holy shit, that looked like it was the first time he had the first time that a Chad Brown horse looked like a Chad Brown horse. Do you remember who that was this spring?
I don't. He had a couple on turf that looked really good late in the meet.
I'll have to look that up later. It's going to bug me. But that was because I said it was the best thing, and I can't remember. It's in my stable. I'll go look later. Yeah, Dr. Tate texted me this earlier today. Baffert 0-6 since the drug positive. Coincidence? I mean, partially. I looked at who some of those were, but it is fun to think about at least. Just like,
yeah, I mean, it's if there were people who started the whole, like, since Service and Navarro got arrested, this trainer is X for X, 0 for 36, right? And then they win 5 in a row, and it's like, okay, that stat's blown out of the water now. The thing is, in horse racing, any sample size under like 100 is probably not great. Like, there's just too much racing luck involved. So it's tough to say. It's, and do you really think that anything has changed? And like, we'll see what happens.
Well, we got to be a downer right at the end of the show.
Well, no, just with Bob. Just with Bob. Do you think anything is different? Like, whatever he was doing before, he's probably still doing. Well, like, and maybe that was nothing. Who knows? But like, I just at this point, it's kind of your regiment, right?
Hey, Big Mel, Michael Myers through my racehorse got in on Big Mel. No longer with Baffert. I wonder I didn't hear about that one, but I know Baffert, the Spendthrift and my racehorse moved him away from Baffert. By the way, Spendthrift, let's just say that Bob Baffert's positives versus a certain other horse who you bought into after he broke his maiden graded stakes race last fall. That trainer, it's like 2-1. So we can sit here and pat you on the back for moving horses away from Baffert, but you kind of got this guy that you might want to look out for. So, I don't know. I'm going to hold off on a little bit of praise there. Last thing before we get out of here, Vicky, Baby Magic update. Has he written his first racing article yet? No. He's in there sleeping. He's taking the day off. He does it. Listen, Tuesdays are the day off, but the kid, he asked for some help. He wanted today off too. So
he'll be writing recaps by next weekend.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, listen, Vinny was helping out, and Vinny's going to want to take some time off soon. So I'm like, listen, you're next one up, man. You got to start pulling your weight around here. Diapers are not cheap. Start pulling your weight, kid. But thanks for asking about that. Mike, we've got we're going to do a pick 4 sequence on Thursday, as we always do. Do you have any idea where you want to go? I think Churchill's got a couple of good races going on. We don't have the fields yet, but I don't know. You have an inclination where you want to go for Thursday's show?
I got not a clue, man. I haven't looked past Tuesday. I looked at Indiana Grand today because they had that pick 5 carryover, and then looking at Canterbury tomorrow because they're kicking off their opening night. Want to support them there, and hadn't really looked past that yet. So we'll have to figure out where we're going this weekend.
We didn't You were sweating at Indiana Grand. Did you not sweat it out?
No.
Sorry.
I played the pick 5 because it was a carryover, and I lost the first leg because I didn't use a 6-5 favorite because I often don't use 6-5 favorites, and so I anger bet back a $10 pick 4 that was live. That cost me, what was it, $60? That was live for the last leg, and it was paying 10 grand and 15 grand to it, and I ended up running second and fourth.
Oh, that hurts.
And the favorite one. So I didn't have.
Dr. Tink says he lost too. Moneyware's already stocking up on diapers. I saw a Reddit thing that you would expect to change over 3,000 diapers before the kid's first birthday, and I think we're on pace to exceed that already.
They're little machines, man. They are machines.
There's always more poop. I will leave you with that. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Magic Mike Show. We'll be back on Thursday, 5:30 Eastern, 2:30 Pacific. Make sure you follow us on Twitter so you find out where the hell we're going to cover, because as you found out, we don't even know. I am at Curtis Kellaward. He is at SummerBomb18, number 1, number 8. Corporate Overlords at Racing_Dudes. Make sure if you haven't yet, go check out the Racing Dudes. Mike, Aaron, and Jared gave their instant reaction to the Preakness. You can check that on the YouTube channel. Otherwise, we'll be back on Thursday. Until then, I'm Magic.
And I'm Mike.
Good luck this week.
The Magic Mike Show, where you hear the experts speak. The Magic Mike Show. Tune into the show every week. The Magic Mike Show. You can trust the show is the bomb because it's being brought to you by RacingDudes.com.